Alright, Brush Monkeys, we are back, and this is the next unit in the Realm of Chaos Wrath and Rapture box set. This is the Bloodletters of Khorne. They are, as you can see, I've laid out the paints for them already. This is quite a bit more limited palette than the Slaanesh demons. Khorne is very much, the Blood God is all red and brass and black, and so very limited palette and not a whole lot of colors to choose from in this. I've got one of the first Bloodletters that I painted in the new plastic ones, and it's these same kind of guys, so it's not like a whole different generation or anything. And I'm doing some things differently on these guys, and probably noticed there's a lot already painted on them, which is kind of unusual for a first video. I'm just using this guy as kind of a reference to get the look of the Bloodthirsters or Bloodletters all looking similar, with the black spines and the black horns and the bronze on the swords, the red skin, all that kind of thing. Doing things a little bit differently with these guys. I'm going to change them up, and that's why some of this stuff is already painted, because in making test bases, I hate to waste time with the airbrush on just one thing. Like I did this test sword for these guys from a spare bit, but I didn't want to just do the fade on the sword and not do it on all the rest of them. Like I didn't know how this was going to turn out, but I knew basically I wanted that yellow to red fade on the swords, whatever I was going to end up doing with them. So I did that on all of them. I knew the lava bases were all going to be yellow and orange, so I did that on all of them. It just saves time because when I do a color in the airbrush, it takes like half an hour to clean out the airbrush. Do a really thorough clean on the airbrush. So I hate to put that much work into cleaning the airbrush when I'm not putting that much work into the airbrushing itself, and doesn't take up that much time to do the airbrushing itself. So I've got these guys, so a lot of this has already been done on these guys, and a lot of the airbrushing work is already done. This guy, the standard bearer here, has kind of become my test dummy for a lot of techniques. As you can see, I already did the banner because I was doing the fade on the banner the same as I did the fade on the banner on the Slaanesh banner, so I just went ahead and did the yellow up to red fade on this one. And then I kind of messed up a couple little places on it where you really can't see on here, but that's why I did the blood splatter effect on there. And like I said, in a future video I'll go into how I did the blood splatter effect. We'll talk about that. Yeah, and then the body of him, I ended up, this guy is Mephiston Red with Carroburg Crimson wash, or maybe he's an Agrax Earthshade wash. I forget how I did that guy. But the really dark wash, and then dry brushed again with red, and he looks pretty good. The new guy here is, if you remember my video from a few months ago on the Citadel contrast, this is Blood Angels Red. And I didn't paint him Wraithbone. I left him just the way he was. As you can see, some of these guys have some overspray from the various airbrushing things I've done, and I just left it like that with the zenithal priming and the so you can see they've got like black under there and then gray and then white from on top. Did the zenithal airbrushing, zenithal priming, and then just put on the contrast paint. And I did it kind of as an experiment on this one guy, thinking, you know, one guy's not going to stand out from the rest of the crowd that much, and it looked really good. I really liked how that came out. So yeah, the Citadel contrast paint is how I'm going to be doing all of these guys, just like that. And then I went ahead and did his horns and claws and everything, because I needed his claws painted because I was doing the lava base, and I was going to be doing stuff around his claws. So I needed the claws to be finished. So I finished all the claws. And then, just for giggles, because I had the paint out, I went ahead and painted his tongue. And then I come to realize that the original Bloodthirsters didn't have pink tongues. They had purple tongues. So I got out this is my purple paint, Vallejo model color 70.959 purple. That's going to be their tongues. I'm going to repaint that guy's tongue. Everything else is pretty much the way it is going to be. I've got to paint the hilt of his sword is pretty well done. I'm going to do the handle of his sword there. I'm kind of leaning towards doing that the same purple that I do their tongue, just so purple's kind of a spot color for these guys. and then the banner pole here is going to be black. And then this guy's pretty much done, and he's going to be, well, I got to paint the base band on him there, and I've got the corn red for that. I did the base band on these guys in Mephiston red because these were going with another unit of Chaos Space Marines and the associated monsters and cultists and whatnot. And so I wanted that base band to, and the basing itself to match them. This is going to be its own unit, autonomous from them, and so I wanted the basing to be more like the Slaanesh basing, but not quite the same, so you can see the effect of Slaanesh and Khorne on the bases, and wanted that nice lava effect. That looks really good. I spent weeks working on that lava effect, and then it turns out Citadel came out with Mordant Earth, which is just a black crackle paint. So I kind of kicked myself for spending 3 weeks on something that Citadel just came out with. But, you know, whatever, I got it. So there's that. I'm going to go ahead and finish this guy up with the banner pole, and his tongue and sword hilt, and then all the rest of these guys are going to be like batch painted. So you'll see what they all look like as they're done, and they're all going to get, when they're done, they're all going to get the same treatment that I did on this sword. I wanted it to look like kind of a, the booklet describes the swords as being burned iron, and so I wanted it to kind of look like a piece of iron that had been taken from the forge and still had all the slag and inclusions burning off of it. So I basically just did the same fade, same yellow to red fade that I did on the rest of these swords, okay? And then I painted the blade with a thin coat of Mordant Earth. Well, I painted it with glue first, painted it with white glue, and then when that dried, I painted it with a thin coat of Mordant Earth, and the Mordant Earth cracked really nicely and leaves that kind of burning yellow, orange, red fade underneath it with all these black inclusions kind of almost floating on top of the iron as it's heated. I'm going to try dry brushing this one with, bear with me a second here. I'm going to put a very light dry brush of Reaper Master Series paint 09205 Black and Steel. It's a really nice dark color. It's actually a little bit darker than Citadel's Lead Belcher. If this isn't dark enough, I've got a mix of, I believe it's Lead Belcher and black paint that might be a little bit darker. Oh yeah, quite a bit darker. All right, well, never mind, I'll go with that. So this is Lead Belcher and black paint. Still kind of in the process of figuring this out. I'm going to take this and I'm going to very lightly dry brush it along the edges of the thing so it looks like where the iron has cooled enough to actually look like metal again. Hot metal looks like cold metal, and it takes a lot of work to kind of figure out how to make that look like that on plastic. So anyway, I've rambled on for almost like 9 minutes now, so I'm going to go ahead and pause and base coat all these guys, and then when I come back I'll show you what they all look like, and we'll move on to the shade washes and etc, etc. Alright, see you soon. Alright, we're back and we have these guys pretty well base coated now. I wanted to take a minute and talk about the color I did on these guys because some of you may remember my sorry, I got a little distracted there. The contrast paints review video I did a few months back where I said I was fully prepared to not like these paints, and I was wrong. I was actually, like I said, I haven't tried out the entire line, but the ones I've used I am pleasantly surprised with. I'm still cleaning up a few little things here and there on these guys, but bear with me a second. There we go. For some reason I keep missing the same spot on these guys a lot. Like, I've base coated so many colors on these guys, and yet every time I come back over it I find another spot I've missed, and so I have to add some more. I think the contrast paints, when they dry, tend to shrink up a little bit. But this guy is just about done. You can see all the base coating is done on him. I need to do some shade washing, but I did the test sword. I did the lava base on there, painted the back of his banner, all that kind of fun stuff. But he's looking pretty good. I'm going to do a crimson wash on the banner, and for most of these guys, for the most part, you can, okay, on these guys you can see the color gradient on the skin tones that comes from using that contrast paint, and it's just Blood Angels red over Zenithal priming, and that's why you see he's darker and lighter in some places where he's highlighted. He's darker in some places where the Zenithal priming is showing through, and it's not that dissimilar from painting with inks, but like I said in the contrast paints video, I was fully prepared to not like these paints, and I'm already so far ahead on these guys that it's ridiculous. Like the shade washing is only really going to need to be the tongues and the sword hilts and the brass parts, and that's really about it. I've got Carroburg Crimson here for the banner. I've got Seraphim Sepia here for the sword parts, because I'm going to want them to look a little brassy, so they're getting Seraphim Shade Wash and then Golden Griffin dry brush. The blades, of course, are going to be getting that Mordant Earth look to them, and then they'll be dry brushed with this blackened metal that I've got here. And then we'll do the Mordant Earth on the bases, and our lava mix around their feet for the texture. And oh, and then I thought about doing the eyes in yellow, and then I thought it'd probably be better to do the eyes in white. I don't know if you can make that out there, but the eyes are actually dotted in white, and then I'm going to go over them with yellow ink, and I'll probably be doing a little bit of the sword, glazing that in yellow ink as well. So yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and shade wash these guys, and then we'll come back, see how they look, and start doing some highlights. All right? Okay, see you soon. Alright, so we got the shade washes done on these guys, and they're looking pretty good. Get a light where you can see it here. There we go, that's a little better. So yeah, the sword hilts are looking good. I also glazed the blades a little bit to kind of smooth out that transition between the yellow and the red, and kind of add a little more yellow to the end of the blade, so it looks a little more like hot iron or hot metal. I did that to all of them. Glazed the eyes yellow, so they're all good to go. So now we're just going to dry brush the sword hilts gold and the handles with purple, and do a little on the tongue there too. And then I'm going to paint the blades with the Elmer's glue, so that, and the bases as well, so when we go to put the crackle medium on, it'll be it'll crack up nice and deep. So I will go do that, and then we'll come back and check on that progress. Yeah. Alright, so the highlights are done. Wasn't a whole lot to highlight. I was just really, because of the contrast paints doing most of the highlighting and shading for me, most of the highlights just consisted of dry brushing the gold parts and then dry brushing the purple on there. And I just got a little bit of highlight there, a little bit on the tongues, and they look really good. So now I'm going to go and do the glue portion. Just get a little bit on my palette there, and like I said in a previous video, the glue is mostly just to help the crackle paint crackle a little bit more. So for those of you that haven't seen that video, I'm just going to go in real quickly how to do this. Since I'm doing a crackle paint thing on the blades of the swords, then I'm going to do a layer of glue like that, Just real quick and dirty up the blade. There you go. And then we're going to apply it fairly thick to the base. Get it all in there around the feet. And this will probably be left overnight to dry and set up, and then tomorrow I'll put the crackle medium on there and leave that to sit for a few hours. So there you go, just like that, just real quick and dirty, kind of slop it on there. And I'm going to go do that with all the rest of these guys, and then we'll come back when I've put the crackle medium on, and you'll see what it looks like. All right, see you then. See you soon. All right, so we've got the crackle effect done on the blades and the crackle effect on the base, and they are both looking fantastic. I really like how that crackle came out on the base. It cracked up nice and thick, and so now we're going to apply the texture paint I made. And for those of you that don't remember, a few months back I tried to come up with my own black crackle paint, because at the time Citadel didn't make it, and so I spent about 3 weeks and documented it all on a video trying to make this stuff. And this is just crackle paste with black craft paint added to it, and it doesn't crack, but it does have a nice texture of cooled lava to it. So I'm going to take some of this stuff and put it around the base of the figure's feet, and kind of make it look like they're standing on solid lava, sort of like I did with this guy. You can see where I've got the crackle effect out here and here, and then I've got the darker solid lava that he's standing on in between. Okay, so I'm going to do that with all of them, and then I'll be ready to put these guys on corks and paint the base bands, and they're essentially done. I mean, these guys are getting done pretty quick. So I'm going to go ahead and texture them all, and then we'll come back in a bit. Okay? All right, we're back, and you can see the bases have been textured with that lava texture paint that I made up. And now we're going to take just a little bit of Dawnstone and do a very light dry brush on these guys, and I mean light dry brush. Like, you're not looking to I don't need that one. You're not looking to turn them gray. You want them to be a very, very if anything, light black. And it's just going to be a very, very, very light dry brush. So just get a little bit on your brush there. And I'm going to go ahead and do this on camera because I want you to see how it looks. Brush as much off on the paper towel as you can. Brush some off on your thumb. Whatever gets the most paint off the brush. And then just very light dry brush. Like I said, you don't want to turn it gray. You just want it just enough that it brings out that texture on the flow. That's all you really want. Just want a little bit of texture there. And that's it. I know it sounds kind of weird to say you don't want to turn it gray. You just want it light black. Light black is kind of gray. But there you go. That's really all I'm looking for there. See, it hasn't really turned it. It's not as light as you'd expect Dawnstone to be. And it's just enough to kind of pick out those raised edges. There we go. And give a little bit of texture to that texture paint. And just looking at just enough there. Gotta figure out what direction everything's flowing in and brush across it to get that texture. Once we get this part done, these guys for the most part are pretty well done. We just need to put them on corks and paint the base bands and then matte seal them, and these guys are done. One thing I did while I was off camera was, you may not be able to see it on this camera, but I did a little light dry brush on the tips of the swords too, just to get that little kind of metallic look back to it. I wanted them to look like, the goal of these swords was to make them look like a piece of steel that had just been taken out of the forge and still had that kind of slag inclusions on it that were carbon that was getting burned off, that kind of thing. And so that's why we did the yellow to red and then put the black crackle paint over there. And I think we got it looking pretty good for molten metal. And then so I'm pretty happy with how these guys are turning out so far. The next unit, when we get these guys done, the next unit is going to be the Flesh Hounds, and I got something kind of different planned for the Flesh Hounds and Karnak. And unlike what we did with the Slaanesh side of this Realm of Chaos box, where we painted the Demonettes and then the Seekers and then the Fiends and then finally the Infernal Enraptures, the special character, Karnak is essentially a three-headed Flesh Hound. He's a special character, but he's basically a Flesh Hound. So I think I'm going to paint him at the same time as the Flesh Hounds, because he's going to use all the same tools and techniques. I'll make a point of pointing out on the video when I'm doing something on Karnak, but for the most part we're just going to do the Flesh Hounds and Karnak all at the same time and just bang them out like that. So that's these guys dry brushed now, and now it's just a matter of taking them and putting them on the corks and painting the base bands. And for those of you that haven't tuned into the other videos, the reason we put them on these corks, and I'll drag out some of these corks here. The cork is basically just a cork that I bought from, I think, Michael's or Hobby Lobby or something like that. You can get them for like $3 for a few dollars, and then it's got a piece of poster tack on the top, little sticky stuff on the top. And we put these guys on these bases because if you look at how the Citadel painting handle grabs them, and the Citadel painting handle is fantastic. I love using this thing. It fits in my hand really well. Gives me a nice solid grip on the figure while I'm painting. But if you look at the top, there's 4 points on this thing where it grips the base that you can't paint the base band. So if you've got it stuck to that base band, you can even see where it's kind of rubbing off the paint right there. You can't paint the base band with these guys on it. So I take them off and I stick them to the cork and just kind of press them down there, and there you go. It does the same thing, and I used these corks for years before I bought all these painting handles. It's because I wanted them to be I use these for years because they're a great option. I can, like I said, I can paint the base bands on them. I can see, you can see where it rubbed off the paint on the test figure on those places. So, but I use these corks for years. It's a great option. It's a cheap option. If you don't have a lot of money, you know, you could buy for the same $8 that you're buying the Citadel paint handle for. You can buy 6 corks or 3 corks and some poster tack and have pretty much the exact same thing. Now I did go with the Citadel paint handles because I noticed after a while the corks will, the poster tack will start losing some of its tack. So you'll like turn a figure over to get on the underside of it, and it falls off and lands on the floor, which is horrific if you're trying to paint it. See, like that one doesn't want to stick anymore. So I gotta peel it off, and I'm gonna knead it up, and it wants to stick to the cork just fine, just doesn't want to stick to the figure. So every so often you gotta knead them up, stick them back on there, hope for the best. Okay, there we go. So I tend to not use the corks for the painting as much anymore, but I still use them for painting the base bands and for matte sealing them. So I usually reserve those for the last two steps. Once everything else on the figure is done, and I just need to paint the base bands and matte seal them, then the corks get a chance to shine. So let me get these out of the way here, and we'll go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and pause, cork the rest of these guys, paint the base bands, and matte seal them, and then I'll come back and show you the finished Bloodletters. So I think they're going to be pretty impressive. All right. Alright, Brush Monkeys, we are back, and as you can see, our Bloodletters are finished. They're all matte sealed. They're all wrapped up, and they look pretty damn spiffy, if I do say so myself. Now, one thing I will point out, the blood splatter on the banner here, you'll notice I kind of went over it with a gloss coat just to bring that fresh blood splatter out of that. I didn't talk about how to do this, and I'm not going to do it now. I do have a future video in mind where I go over a few different ways to do the blood splatter, and a couple of different products you can use to do that. So stay tuned. I'm not going to put a lot of blood on these guys, so I'm not going to do the blood splatter thing during the Wrath and Rapture painting of the corn side. Even though he is the blood god, there's just not going to be bathing these guys in gore. So once I wrap up this video series, then I will do a video on blood splatter and a couple of different ways to do that, a couple of different products you can use, and go into that. We'll just do a whole blood splatter video, but it's not going to be necessary for the corn side of the Wrath and Rapture box set, and so I'm not going to go into it now. But this right here gives you an idea of what the color scheme is going to look like with these guys. There's some more Bloodletters that are on the backs of the Juggernauts, and they're going to get their swords and skin and everything done the same way. Their bases will all be done the same way with that kind of lava base on there. You can see how that turned out. And I think this is a really good color scheme for these guys. I think they look really fantastic. Again, I can't say how impressed I am with the contrast paint coming out as well as it did over the Zenithal priming. So of course I'll be doing that with the rest of them as well. And yeah, it's going to look pretty good. So up next is the Flesh Hounds, and you can see I've already got them on their bases and Zenithal primed up. And along with the Flesh Hounds, like I said, Karanak is basically just a three-headed. He's the special character for the corn side, but he's basically just a three-headed Flesh Hound. So I'm going to be doing him the same way as the others, and doing him at the same time. And you can see he's got a little bit bigger base, so I put him on a bigger handle. Put him on one of the XL handles. So that's going to be the next video coming up. It's going to be the Flesh Hounds and Karanak. So stick around and stay tuned for that next week. And I will see you then. Bye. Hey Brush Monkeys, Tom from Flying Monkey Studios here. If you like what you see, click like. If you want to find out when new videos get posted, click subscribe. Comment below on what you want to see on future videos. Visit our Patreon site for lots of ways that you can support me in doing what I do. You can also visit our Instagram and Facebook pages to see all the miniatures that I paint on this channel, and see how you can get your hands on one of your own. So thanks a lot for your time, and thanks for watching my videos, and I will see you guys later. Bye.